All right, guys. So some of you may already know about this job if you've talked to me on Instagram or on email. But this is actually a project rifle that I started a good bit of years ago. And this is a 1903 A3 chambered in 6.5 Creedmoor. Because 3-4 years ago, I thought it'd be really cool to take a receiver that I had bought as just a receiver and bolt and do something fun with it. It was missing pretty much all your bits and pieces, but it was a receiver and bolt, okay? There was no barrel, there was no stock, there was no bottom metal, there was no trigger. It's not like I was molesting a military surplus rifle in original condition and doing this to it. In fact, when I purchased it, I thought it would be a lot of fun to just put it back into original configuration with a reproduction, 1903 A3 barrel and a reproduction stock. You know, if I'm going to make it like new, I might as well go with the repros because it's already not numbers matching. But then I realized that was going to cost me as much as just buying a 1903 A3 in original condition, numbers matching. So I figured why not just actually do something fun with it. So I was in gunsmithing school. I guess it was 4 years ago because I was in gunsmithing school. And I was getting near the end of it, and I thought it'd be really cool to do 6.5 Creedmoor. And I looked at all the different barrels that all the competition shooters were winning competitions with, and it came down to Bartlein, Krieger, Lilja, and there were some Schillings in there, but most of the time it was Bartlein. Well, Bartlein had a really, really long back order, but Krieger, I believe is what I got, did not have a huge back order on 6.5 heavy Palma barrel blanks. So that's what this is. This is a heavy Palma profile barrel blank that I chambered with a match grade reamer in 6.5 Creedmoor. Now, I also machined the muzzle, which was pretty neat, just to have an 11-degree target crown, okay? And I didn't turn down the profile at all. I believe I cut it down to 24 inches because I wanted this thing to be a pretty good shooter. Then I had to find a rail mount, which ended up being harder than I thought it would be, okay? Because, don't get me wrong, Leupold makes one, but it really only works with their rings pretty much. And I'm not using Leupold rings. You can't pay me to do that. So I went with, man, it might even be EGW. I don't remember. But I remember it required a lot of fitting back here at the dovetail. And obviously it had to be drilled and tapped. I've drilled and tapped a lot of things in my life. And this receiver has to be one of the hardest materials I've ever tapped. It was quite a beast. Okay, I broke a tap in there. First tap I ever broke actually was in this action. I have since broken more. But the first tap I ever broke was in this action. Okay, once that was drilled and tapped, then I had to actually grind. I say grind, it was a lot of filing the bolt knob, or the bolt itself, to clear the scope. Okay, because it came up too much to work with the scope that I bought, and I wasn't really going to go with a much smaller scope no matter what I switched to. So this is currently in a completely unfinished state. So if you look, this bolt is flat here and rounded everywhere else because all I did was take the material off required to clear the scope. You'll also notice that the side of the extractor was relatively bent out of shape. I bent it back the best I could, but I ended up having to grind off some extra material there. So it's a little thinner than it normally is, but it was really dragging in the action, man. It was slowing it down so much it wasn't funny. Then bottom metal, trigger. Trigger's a Timney 1903 trigger, okay? It's good enough. I don't see the point in switching to anything different with what this meme build is. This is not like something I would take to a competition, although if you wait a little bit, you'll find out that I could take it to a competition. This thing actually shot really, really well. The rest of the build is a garbage Boyd stock. Now, I typically don't love to just put out hate on a company. But this thing sucks, okay? This stock is terrible. Now, obviously, I knew it was going to be terrible before I bought it. But the reason I bought it was because there were no other companies out there producing an inletted 1903 stock or A3 stock. And I obviously wasn't going to go with the original wood. What I wanted was a Macmillan stock. So I actually called Macmillan twice and talked to them over the phone about, I believe it was their A4 or A5 stock. I don't remember. One of their very common stocks. And they told me that there's no way it would ever work because of the way this action would sit in the stock. It will be too high up because of maybe it's the way the tang angles down. I'm not sure, to be honest with you, man. They were pretty vague on the phone. And in fact, they were so adamant that it would not work. They told me that since I have now told them that it would be going with a 1903 A3, they would not sell it to me if they had the choice. Like if I had called them to purchase it, they would just tell me, no, we will not sell you that because it's not going to work. It's going to be unstable or unrepeatable, even if it's bedded. Like it was a long conversation. And that didn't work out. And there's a couple other companies producing some like cheap Monte Carlo style stuff, you know? And I would really have liked an A4 style stock to go with this 1903. Despite the heavy profile barrel, I would have just hogged it out some more. So this is what's on there. It is not good by any stretch of the imagination, but it's what it's got. Pillar bedded, if it makes any difference to some of you guys. The scope that was on it was the Vortex Strike Eagle 5-25 by 56, if it matters to you guys. This thing is a pretty awesome budget scope. I was very pleased with its performance. Out to 100 yards is the most I shot this thing so far. 100 yards, this thing was pretty good. I liked it. Good glass clarity for what it is. For the budget line, it did just fine, okay? So, where are the issues? Why was it a waste of my time? Well, one more plus side before I tell you the waste of time issue. This here is some targets. One target sheet from the day I went out there and took it out to 100 yards and plinked around with it. I'm going to give you some close-ups of this, but the first target I'm showing you guys is actually a .315 inch group at 100 yards. This is with the Hornady ELD Match 140 grain projectiles. This was amazing. And this was actually repeatable. This is the only target I kept, but it's repeatable. And the reason I kept this target is because the rest of the target is actually 4 groups of Winchester quote-unquote match boat tail hollow points, also in 140 grain. This gun did not like these those projectiles at all. It didn't love the Hornady, I think it was the Whitetail 6.5 Creedmoor that it would do a 1-inch group with, which is not bad for some, let's be honest, budget hunting ammo, and a lot better than the Winchester quote-unquote match ammunition. I have some Nosler ammo to test it out with, and I also want to test it out with some Federal Gold Medal Match with the Burgers, but those have basically stopped existing since 2019. Have not seen one in stock anywhere in person, so may not be something that's going to happen. Downsides. Why is it a waste of my time? Well, the reason I only went out to one range session, and I mean, I got like 5 targets. I threw the other 4 away because they've been sitting in my garage for years. Because it was years ago. This thing doesn't feed. It feeds perfectly fine from the left side of the double stack magazine and does not feed at all from the right side of the double stack magazine. So those of you familiar, this is a double stack, double feed box magazine. I mean, it's internal. It's part of the bottom metal, but it is a double stack, double feed. Long action. Now, you guys are already saying, well, 6.5 Creedmoor is a short action. Correct. And it wouldn't be an issue whatsoever if this was a single feed gun. But since it's a double feed gun, and Creedmoor obviously has different dimensions than 30-06, it did create issues. So the issues it created was from the left side of the stack, you would have no problem feeding into the chamber. From the right side of the stack, the cartridge 100% of the time would get forced into the ejector cutout of the barrel. Okay. The ejector cutout is for Mauser style claw extractors. You have this big old claw right there. Okay. This claw has to go somewhere when it is put into battery. And that claw has a cutout in the barrel that it fits into nicely, holds onto the shell, and the rest of the barrel is just more or less the rest of the barrel face is more or less a cone because of these rounded surfaces right here. Okay. That's no bueno. And when I say it got rammed into the extraction or the extractor claw cutout, I mean it was in there. Like you almost ruin the projectile if you really try to force it home like first try, because it was guaranteed to go in there. So I shot the entire day single feed, 2 or 3 shots at a time, let the barrel cool off. I really wanted to test the accuracy of this rifle. And the accuracy, I mean, I was pleased. I was very pleased with the accuracy, especially when I found a load it liked, the 140 grain ELD matches. I'd like to try the 147s. Like I said, I have Noslers I'd like to try. I'd like to try maybe some Barnes. You know, like there's a lot of stuff I want to try out with this thing, especially hand loads. Like this, can you imagine having a completely custom from the ground up 6.5 Creedmoor 1903 A3 that shoots less than .315? Like, this is a factory load. I know the chamber's in perfect spec. I know my crown is perfect. Dude, there's no way we can't do better than .315. I'm willing to bet you money that we could get this thing shooting a single hole if I just could get it to feed. I just don't feel like shooting it when it won't feed. So I have come up with a couple different ideas that maybe we'll show on the channel in the future. And that would be to either close up those feed lips in the receiver by welding on extra metal to create more narrow feed lips to create a single feed gun permanently, or to find a way to make that accept Magpul 308 mags, and then block off the rear the rear behind that magazine. So if that mag goes in there, the back part, the gap is closed off. Now we have a single feed magazine that would work just fine because it's going to go straight into the feed ramp directly ahead of it instead of getting pushed over to the side, and then it's going to feed in. And that might be a pretty good option. The problem is stock still sucks. So this is one of those like long-term projects where one day I'll have a different stock, I'll have it feeding correctly, and it'll be a really, really cool gun to just, show and tell. I'm not going to do much with it. I could enter precision competitions with it as long as there's no running around, because that heavy Palma barrel is extremely heavy. But it's a really cool, just interesting rifle. I think it's an interesting little setup. It's for fun. It's a meme gun, guys. Like, it's nothing more than a meme gun because I could. So the other issue, I guess that was pretty much all I had to say. I thought I had more to say about it, but then I realized that the only real issue was the feeding issues. And like I said, I've done like some drawings of some ideas I have on how to fix that feeding issue. And the main idea is I would like it to take Magpul 308 mags. Okay, it's just the simplest way to do that. It'd be the simplest way to fix it. I've seen a guy who actually machined a whole new bottom metal piece that was actually bigger than the original bottom metal, but it accepted the Magpul mags. And that whole block just seems a little bit too much for my taste. I would rather keep this bottom metal piece and then cut open the bottom if it's wide enough, and then find the height that the magazine needs to sit, pin it in, or do something with it inside of this bottom metal. That way you're not adding too much extra weight, and I'm also not inletting a bunch of new stuff on whatever stock I do go with. I might even try one day, if I could get the money for it, I might even try taking a Macmillan A5 stock and just trying it anyways and seeing if they're wrong. You know what I mean? If I had the time, I would just completely inlet some big old blank stock that I could find and just do a completely custom build. And I mean custom, I mean just like I can take a wooden blank and turn it into a rifle stock. I don't want wood on this gun, so I wouldn't go with wood, but I could find something and just completely hand fit, hand shape the entire stock and make it a 100% one-off. But I don't have the time to do that. Hand fitting, inletting a stock is one thing. Completely shaping a stock on the outside is totally different and requires a lot more time. It's not something you can do in a day or two. It's something you do over weeks. And I don't have that kind of time. So to put the money in that and bring it home and do almost nothing with it for months and months and months is just not an option. So this thing has been sitting in my house for quite a while. One day it will be a fully functioning 1903 A3 and 6.5 Creedmoor that shoots sub-MOA. It currently shoots sub-MOA. It's not fully functioning. It's in a terrible stock. It's got a budget scope on it, but that budget scope did the job, getting a 0.3 inch group. Do you guys have any interesting projects that you thought would be a lot of fun but ended up wasting your time? Or was it fun? Did you guys have any really fun wastes of time when it comes to firearms, especially project builds, guys? I know a lot of guys do really goofy projects because why not, right? If you've got something like that, let me know. Either send me an email at tbrgunworks@gmail.com or leave a comment. Preferably leave a comment. If you guys haven't checked out the podcast, make sure to check out The Ready Room by TBR Gunworks on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, blah, 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 all the podcast sites. And if you want to suggest an episode idea for the podcast, make sure to send me an email. I actually read those emails, and we have already had a user-submitted idea as a podcast episode. I am a man of my word. If it's a good idea, I will do it, and I will give you credit. Okay? I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and I can't wait to see you next time. Take care.